I'm wondering if anyone who watched this episode genuinely believed that Kikimora would turn toward the light. That's not a rhetorical question, I'm genuinely interested. I didn't, but it's not entirely unbelievable. On one hand, it is a little absurd that Luce trusts her so quickly, especially considering all that Kikimora has done to our team of heroes, from being the one to capture Raine and destroy their resistance with that Coven brand, to personally seeking to eliminate Hunter, whatever the costs. The Boiling Isles is a world full of flesh-eating monsters, and its villainous organization, the Emperor's Coven, is led by an abusive father figure and crazed megalomaniac, and yet Kikimora is the quite possibly least sympathetic character in this world. Now, I'm not saying it's contrived narratively that Luce trusts her. This is who Luce is. She is an extremely trusting person. Sometimes it works for her, and sometimes it doesn't. The Owl House has in the past demonstrated time after time instances of Luce seeing someone's rough exterior and not believing that's all there is to them, and so she tries to get to know them better, and that pays dividends. This is exactly what happened with Amity. This is what happened with V, and this is what happened with Hunter. If you are Luce and you have already had those successes in the past, believing that you would have another success with Kikimora, as dire as the odds may appear, is not entirely unreasonable. And perhaps she was not completely wrong to see that Kikimora is wavering a little. Sure, Kikimora does not turn in this episode, but there is no reason to believe that she won't possibly turn later. She was not tricking Luce the entire time, it seems. She is just spiteful and capricious. She has no real loyalties except what she believes will benefit herself. At the start of the episode, when she was on the outs in the Emperor's Coven in a very precarious position, going with Luce was not a terrible option, but once she receives that promotion offer from the Emperor's Coven, she switches back to them. This does not make her some sort of strategic mastermind, it makes her a very confused and lost person who is not sure what she wants for herself. If I were Balos, I would not be entirely certain that Kikimora is strongly committed to my side. On a more general note, having the Owl House back again is a pleasure, and I dearly hope the show makes use of every episode in the future, considering how few of them there are left. I've heard some people say the show is a bit too fast-paced right now, and I don't agree with that at all. If anything, the show could go a little faster. The problem is that the show sets up all of these little plot threads and all these little secondary characters. And because there are so many of them and the show has so little time, it cannot address them all. There are a few nice moments, such as the sweet little interaction between Willow and Amity in this episode, in which they try to smooth over the resentment that had really developed in Willow toward Amity after Amity stopped being her friend all those years ago. But the show is so sprawling in its focus that it can never really address all of these different characters and little plot lines it set up. It can only do the best it can, and I look forward to seeing its valiant efforts to tie together all these different threads in the upcoming episodes of Season 2. It is a table-setting episode, nothing particularly special. I am not sure that even this episode's most ardent defenders would call it one of the best episodes in the series. It's good. It's functional. It's important to have an episode like this. It helps set up these different threads and these different ideas that the show is ostensibly going to develop going forward. You have Balos finally revealing his face to the masses and launching into his grand utopian plan for the Day of Unity, which he does not reveal a lot of details about, but he does say that it will be the end of relying on wild magic. So as we learn more about Balos' backstory, it will be interesting to see where his aversion to wild magic comes from, and how it developed in his psyche. We get these storylines for Raine and Kikimora. Perhaps most importantly, we get the important detail of Luce not really knowing how to handle the promise she made to her mother. I was a little worried after the mid-season finale, as much as I love that episode, that it would just be a one-off, and we would return back to the grandiose plot stakes about stopping Balos, and the storyline with Luce's mother, Camilla, would recede to the background, but this is not the case. And I'm glad for that, because it is the most interesting conflict the show has to offer, because it is the one wherein there is not an easy answer. There's no singular right choice for Luce to make. She's stuck between a lot of options that are not exactly optimal. Whatever choice she makes, she's afraid that she's going to upset someone. If she stays in the Boiling Isles, then she is going to have to betray her mother, and if she stays on Earth, then that would mean leaving behind her second family on the Boiling Isles, and it would also mean betraying herself and her desires for herself. So it's a conundrum for her, and the show gets a lot of dramatic mileage out of depicting Luce struggling with this conundrum and trying to decide what to do with herself. I love how she reacts to the Kikimora storyline. While she does want to reunite Eda and Raine, and she does want to believe the best in everyone, as we've seen in the past, she is also invested in helping Kikimora because she sees in Kikimora a model for her own future. If Kikimora can just disappear, and thus leave the Emperor's Coven without having to abandon it, Kikimora could thus have the best of both worlds, and Luce wants that too. She wants to stay in the Boiling Isles, but she wants to do this without having to face the responsibility of confronting the promise that she made to Camilla. She wants the ease of not having to deal with all her problems with her mother on Earth, and the comfort she finds in the Boiling Isles. But of course, life is not that simple, and she cannot just shirk the responsibility of making decisions for herself. My favorite scene in this episode is probably the initial scene in which Luce tries to find a middle ground between what she wants and what she knows her mother wants. She tries to shoot video that will relate to her mother that the Boiling Isles, despite its macabre exterior, is not as bleak and dangerous as it sounds, but this mission fails. The Boiling Isles, whatever it offers to Luce, is a perilous, desolate place, and no amount of positive spin Luce tries to put on it can obscure that fact. Luce knows precisely how crazy wanting to stay in the Boiling Isles makes her from the perspective of her mom. And her gambit to shoot the perfect footage to paint the Boiling Isles in a pleasant, idealistic light doesn't work because it can't cover up that horror that is at the heart of the Boiling Isles. Luce wants to stay in this world, and from what we've seen in her behavior, staying in this world would probably be good for her. But at the same time, staying in this world is a little crazy. It's not some paranoid, anxious fantasy of her mom. Staying in this world is, from the perspective of an outsider, a strange decision, considering how much more perilous the Boiling Isles is compared to Earth. I dearly hope that we see more of Luce's struggle with herself as the series progresses. It is one of the most ambiguous narrative threads in the entire show. Luce does not have an easy answer, unlike, oh hey, Baelos is bad, let's stop him. These internal conflicts are harder to resolve. And lastly, we have Raine, who is subject to a mind control memory erasure plot. The details of this are a little hazy, and I'm glad the show isn't so blunt and overt about what happened to them. This is not one of those plots wherein the brainwashed character is just a zombie puppet who's antagonistic toward the heroes. Raine still cares about Eda, they still want the best for Eda, and they still have a lot of affection for Eda. And yet, they are still ardently on the side of the Emperor, and do not welcome Eda's attempts to spirit them away from the Emperor and his crazy plans for the future. Normally, I'm not a big fan of these possession mind control plots because they often serve as a way to generate conflict between two characters who should be on the same side, and thus cause a lot of emotion, a lot of drama, without actually having to organically write these intricate, complicated, nuanced situations that pit two quote-unquote good characters against each other. And to a certain extent, my complaints are valid in this episode. I believe I do not think the Raine plot is the best part of the episode, but I do like it for Eda's reactions. Eda has wanted to patch up the relationship with their ex. She has been really optimistic about the future for the two of them, not romantically necessarily, but in the sense of just restoring the bond that was lost between them. Eda's difficulties dealing with her curse and her inability to completely let Raine into that chaotic inner world that she is trying to conceal. Eda and Raine have made a lot of progress to building back that relationship, and now all that work seems to be undone, and this is devastating for Eda. And everything from the voice acting to the animation of Eda's face conveys that devastation quite well. And because of that, I'm interested to see what the show does with this relationship, and with Raine's struggle, perhaps, to fight against the control that the Emperor and his coven have over them. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can. And you want to see more videos like this before anyone else does, keep watching The Owl House. I'm so glad it's back. Tell me what plot threads you want to see the show deal with in the future. I'm really interested to see what they do with Luce and her relationship with her mom. Anyway, tune in soon for the next analysis. It will be coming soon. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.